But right now, going back to Steve Quayle. Steve, for the next 10 minutes, you've got the floor. Other key areas, other things that listeners need to know about from all of your research as all of this appears to come to a head, as the enemy openly announces what their plans are for society, for all of us. I mean, when they come out and say, we wear black uniforms to intimidate you, as they announce that, I mean, I'm just going to show people on the document cam some of the news that I have here in front of me. Here's making sure Osama does not hijack bass boats. That's Associated Press there for everybody, just right out in the open. Here's another one. U.S. Air Force calls for mission to combat climate change by spraying the atmosphere. And just as we always said, by adding stuff to jet fuel. Town hall snoopers hijack terror, anti-terror powers to crack down on people's dogs using the bathroom in the park. I mean, you cannot make this type stuff up. Mennonite arrested for selling raw milk, highly respected, large facility. No one had ever gotten sick. They actually pasteurize it so they can feed you milk full of cow dung and blood and pus. And I've worked in dairies. Well, I've worked around them. I visited them. I've worked on ranches that had dairies, and then I've been made to work in them. Maybe a week or two out of 3 years I worked on ranches, but I know a little bit about them. Point is it's really serious. Mennonite arrested. Sheriff's candidate believes crime is terrorism. I mean, it just goes on and on. Steve, your take on that?
Well, I think the everything is happening concurrently. You know, I think people fail when they look at the world in a linear way, first and foremost, because they don't see how it's all turned loose at once. For instance, the genetically modified food, Alex, the situation with the xenoestrogens in bottled water, men's sperm count being so low. I mean, literally all of the issues that genetically we were designed so wonderfully and so beautifully. The 139th Psalm tells us that God, his thoughts towards all of us who come to know him are more numerous than the sand of the sea. So God really has our best interests at heart. But the thing is that people don't recognize that right now, the vaccination, here's what I was told, the most pressing bit of information I can tell everyone, is that the vaccination, look, all they have to do, Alex, is present 4 dead bodies, give it mass media hype and hysteria, and tell you that if you don't go, and by the way, they'll mutilate the bodies and say, look what this horrible disease has done, and if you don't take the vaccination, you'll be placed into a camp for your safety and for the safety of those around you.
Well, they have said they'll use biological attacks, real or promulgated, as a pretext for control. They've built 36. Yeah. By the way, I saw a YouTube comment last week. I was talking about 36 level 4 bioweapons labs and part of the program BioShield, which mainstream news, Baltimore Sun, and others have reported, Steve, are basically fronts for bioweapons development. And then I had some guy comment about, where's Alex's proof? I don't have to sit here on everything I say and show you a news article, folks. In fact, in a week or two, I'll say, hey, big Massachusetts police chief says we want black uniforms to instill fear and intimidate the population. Don't email me saying, where's the proof? Google it. I mean, today I'm showing people the article. Today I'm showing a Mennonite arrested for selling raw milk. But the point is, we're not making any of this up, Steve.
No, and the bottom line is, remember, those who always, say that on the air, like when I'm on Coast to Coast, I mean, these guys are government shills. They are actually paid to come on and say, where's the proof? Well, get off your lazy keister and go Google it. That's what I tell them now.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to put on the document cam the Associated Press. Okay, Genesis Network, we'll be back in 3 minutes. For everybody watching on PrisonPlanet.tv, we're live right now. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Alex.
This is just a little segment we're doing on the web for everybody right now. What are some of the other issues? Because I want to get calls in, but, man, this is moving so fast. What are some of the key points we haven't covered? We'll cover when we get back.
Well, I think the thing is that the weather, and this is really critical for people to understand, the seismic, and you touched on the tectonic weapons, i.e., former defense secretary, et cetera. But the bottom line is, Alex, this is underway, and they are trying concurrently not only to set off the New Madrid quake and the situation, the coast, okay, the stuff going off the Oregon coast, that's one of the largest undersea volcanoes in the world, okay? So the point is I just counted them, there's over 100 quakes today in Nevada. We had a Mexico City quake. These guys are getting ready. And whether people like it or not, I think the greatest migration in history, in other words, people fleeing for their life, is going to be underway, because that's exactly the plan of the Illuminists. They're easier to pick off, not only as they keep them in the big cities.
Well, where do they get these police chiefs? I had the Bergen County police chief on, which is, a couple million people in New Jersey, and he came on and said that he wants to make everybody take a microchip. I mean, he said that on air. And then you got other police chiefs, serving out M16s and carbines, saying we're going to fight the American people, and bizarre mass police rallies, and saying we want to intimidate people with black uniforms. I mean, they're just nuts.
Well, can I tell you this? And again, Alex, we can really thank God for the fact that we told people, listen, this is play-by-play. I was told by a dark operative. He said, Steve, this is going by the exact plan that Chertoff and the crew basically got outlined to them by Marcus Wolf before he died. This is the exact plan. He said he was present when Primakov was laughing over the stupid Americans.
He's the T-Rex of political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
I remember in 2002 reading that Primakov, the former head of the KGB, had been hired by the U.S. government to come over and advise, and I didn't believe it at first. Then I found the purchase orders, mainstream news stories, where they admitted they were hiring hundreds of former KGB, Stasi heads, others, quote, because they knew how to fight terror and knew how to ferret it out. And then they came over here, the former head of the Stasi, and he died last year, by the way, and helped set all this up. And it's just amazing. And then Steve has a lot of military sources and people, which have turned out to be quite accurate in the past. Steve's not making this stuff up. Tell us about the internal meetings with Primakov and with Marcus Wolf, the head of the Stasi, that some of your sources had, and what those were like, Steve.
Well, according to my sources, who some of them were absolutely privy to what went on. And look, the deal is, Alex, Primakov, KGB, he was also the head of the Middle Eastern branch of the KGB, Saddam Hussein's envoy, etc. So when you talk about him, you're not talking about a low-level guy. You're talking about one of the biggest guys in the world of spycraft. When you're talking about Marcus Wolf, the Department of Homeland Security has set up now this will blow everyone's mind, its entire neighborhood watch program off of the blueprint, if you will, the PowerPoint presentation that Marcus Wolf, former head of the Stasi, let's tell everybody what the Stasi is, the most repressive, secret police regime behind the Iron Curtain that even gave the KGB and the Romanians a run for their money. In other words, this wasn't a man who was a functionary at some mid-level. This was the man. And I was told by someone who now, I don't even know if they're alive, a former officer in FEMA, watch commander. The point is, I was told that the Department of Homeland Security is going to have their people in neighborhood watch groups. And do you know what the number one question that they're prepping everybody for? Tell on your neighbor that might not be favorable to New World Order. Remember when you and I talked about the pastors being solicited to turn in their parishioners?
Yeah, let me throw this in. Almost 2 years ago, we broke that here on Genesis, brought that information out. People said it wasn't true, even when we posted secret, marked restricted FEMA documents when they had 13,000 preachers. Now it's 26,000. They're going to double that now. And now news has admitted, and the media said it's good, they're training you to, quote, this is national news and local news, turn your guns in, hand your guns in, submit, go to FEMA centers, let them take your families. It's happening. This isn't a joke. Now they've recruited 500,000 truck drivers, InfraGard, 23,000 executives. They're going to double that again this year. Now I've got the news here about Associated Press making sure Osama doesn't hijack your bass boat. AP, a boating season approaches. The Bush administration wants to enlist the country's 80 million recreational boaters to help reduce the chances of a small boat could be deliver a nuclear radiological bomb somewhere along the country's 95,000 miles of coast. So they leave the main ports open, but say internally. And it says that they're going to give them training seminars, but it says when you go to these, we got video of them, they first say it's about bin Laden, then they go, by the way, we're fighting marijuana, we're fighting drunk driving, if you see somebody spanking their child, call the police. Again, they say on the surface it's about terror, and then they flip it, spy on your neighbor. And, oh, by the way, Steve, you get stuff from secret sources a lot, and then mainstream sources too. But see, I just go off what they admit, and it meshes with what you just said you got from sources. There was a Washington Post, AP post, in October, right during the Patriot Act, and it said Neighborhood Watch to work with Homeland Security before they even funded it. Clinton gave speeches about it in '93, and they said there that don't trust a priest or a woman with a baby carriage. Al Qaeda has white people too. Watch everyone. The feds are going to be over in control of neighborhood watches. And everybody I know, I mean, I get calls from East Texas, South Texas, Ohio. I see the articles every day where FBI sends out flyers to everybody's homes saying, please come to an anti-terror meeting. And you show up and they say, we want you to spy on your neighbors. Terrorists are everywhere. There's white Al Qaeda, tens of thousands of them. By the way, all crime is Al Qaeda. I mean, and now in rural areas, if you shoot your gun in the backyard, cops show up and ask why you're shooting a gun on your ranch. I mean, Steve, it's really happening.